Anne Arundel County is a beautiful place. It's really a microcosm of the United States, the fourth largest jurisdiction in Maryland. We're at over 580,000 now, and we have BWI Airport. Between Baltimore and Washington in that corridor, we have 530 miles of coast right up against the Chesapeake Bay, and of course we're the capital of Maryland. People come here because it's got urban, rural, suburban. It's really a fantastic place to live.
Our award-winning park system has 130 community parks and 6 regional parks. We have 7,100 acres of recreational land, 9,100 acres of natural resource land, and park systems for everyone that lives in and outside of the county.
Arundel County has done a good job of building our relationships with the community. That helps us make not just the critical decisions, but sound decisions, because we're hearing from a segment of everyone.
There are really 2 things that I think are important for a government. The first is to restore trust. That means restoring trust between people, restore trust in what local government does. And so we've created a thing called Open Arundel, where the residents can go in and look at the performance metrics for every department of county government, and they can engage as well. We do budget town halls in every district, and we make sure that everybody's voice is heard.
Thank you.
And the other is to be healthy, health and wellness for us, our loved ones, our neighbors, our communities. And so I really measure the success of what we do based on health and wellness of our residents.
In land use, we are dedicated to making life better for our residents in Anne Arundel County. Plan 2040 is the guide for the next 20 years to ensure that development is smart, green, and equitable. Smart growth is ultimately health and wellness, because having the ability to walk, development is centered around transit, preserving open space and our natural resources.
Anne Arundel County Department of Recreation and Parks' mission statement is to create opportunities to enjoy life, explore nature, and restore well-being. We have athletic programs, recreational programs, child care services. There's something there for everyone, and we make life better.
In Anne Arundel County, the Department of Health, we are here to prevent, promote, and protect the health of all people in Anne Arundel County and people who visit as well. So our Office of Health Equity and Racial Justice was established when we were looking at what was happening in our county and in the world. And what we saw was persistent disparities in health outcomes based on race, ethnicity, gender, income, and even geography. And so we declared in this county racism as a public health issue in November of 2019. And we formed this Office of Health Equity and Racial Justice to address those issues and advance them.
The Anne Arundel County Police Department was founded in 1937. The agency is very progressive. All of our police officers are fully trained wearing a body-worn camera. We have 2 professors who've come in to help us journey through the history of policing and how policing has impacted communities of color. Having conversations with a facilitator about race and equity and diversity and inclusion, just so that we better understand one another. We have our crisis intervention team where we partner a police officer with a licensed clinician. They respond to these critical calls for service where people are suffering some type of behavioral or mental health crises. So we essentially see them through to any resources that they may require, whether it be a psychologist or drug treatment for longer periods of time. So our team was named the crisis intervention team internationally. That's a huge recognition. So we're asked to go to various police departments to help establish their very own crisis intervention team. There are times where our county departments will overlap, and we have a great working relationship between, OEM and fire. Preety Emmerich, we're rendering or offering assistance to help folks through those moments.
The Office of Emergency Management coordinates the planning, response, and recovery to natural and man-made disasters. That involves a couple of steps. Number 1, in the planning process, making sure we have plans ready. Number 2, we exercise and train with our county agencies. Number 3, when it is time to respond, we activate our Emergency Operations Center. And then that's where all the county agencies come in and coordinate the response. And then the 4th step is really the recovery process. So after the response is done, there's still a lot of cleanup work. There's still a lot of community help that's needed and making sure all the county agencies are involved. One of our newest resources is Pepper the Preparedness Pup. We really want to make sure that children understand that to be prepared is the best thing. So to teach them different situations in very simple terms.
Today we are learning about thunderstorms. Do you know what to do during a thunderstorm?
is just the beginning steps of how to be prepared.
Another thing that we all agree on is that there should be economic opportunity for everyone. As a lifelong business person myself, I'm very aware of the fact that what we do for our residents is possible only if the business community is behind it. The businesses are our partners, and together, everything positive we do for our community is helping the quality of life that people of all ages and all income levels need and want. Those are things that we can deliver in Anne Arundel County, and that's what makes us the best place for all.
All right, well, thank you for joining us this evening to the second of our 7 budget town halls that we're doing as we put together this FY23 budget. I want to remind you that this is a new thing that we've started to do in the county during our administration, to have all of these budget town halls, and we time them so that they come before we hear from all the department heads with their supplemental budget requests. We're doing it as our budget office is looking at what our fiscal projections are. But we want to hear not just from residents, but we want to hear from residents in each district. And we do these with the council member from that district, regardless of which political party they're in. I sit up there in person when they're in person. We were hoping to be in person this year, but we had to go virtual at the end here, so that I and the council member can hear from the same people, our joint constituents, at the same time, can talk afterwards about priorities. And it's great to be here with Councilman Andrew Pruski, because he is a fierce advocate for his district. He understands the budget process. He's the most experienced member of the Anne Arundel County Council, being the only second-term council member. And I can assure you that we sit down, I've sat down with him before this already, and we'll continue to talk about priorities for this district and priorities for the whole county. And we're going to do a presentation that I'm going to be joined by our budget director, Chris Trumbauer, a slide presentation going through a little bit about how we do the budget, a little bit about what we did in the last budget, and I want to assure you that at these budget town halls, unlike maybe some other town hall type things that you've been to in government situations, we really do implement some of the things that are brought to these town halls. And I could go through a long list of things that were done because people advocated for them. Some of them were brand new ideas that people brought to the town halls. So it's worth your time. Most of our time will be spent listening to you. So I will stop talking now, and I will pass it over to Chris Trumbauer. And I'm sorry, I'll pass it over to Andrew Pruski first before we get into the slide presentation, and hear any opening comments that Councilman Pruski has.
Thank you, County Executive, and to the administrative team for being here. We really do appreciate holding these town halls, because it really does allow to give us the opportunity to hear directly from residents. And I just want to bring greetings to anyone from District 4 throughout the county attending. This is your opportunity to provide your priorities for the upcoming year. And we all recognize right now there are some challenging times, but there's some outlook ahead. We're in a happy new year in 2022. We're certainly excited. We're looking forward to hearing from you at this budget hearing. I know particular, when I was looking at the census data the other day, I saw how much District 4 has grown, particularly in Odenton. It is now bigger than the city of Annapolis in terms of population. So just to tell you in terms of what's happening, and certainly the budget priorities that we have, and I'll discuss them a little bit later, but we have many priorities that we're going to try and push with the help of the county executive to bring some additional infrastructure and support to our residents. But we appreciate the work that's happening and occurring, and we're looking forward to hearing from everyone this evening. Thank you.
So I think we are going to pull up this slide presentation, and Chris Trumbauer will lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good to see you, Councilmember Pruski. So what I'm going to do is start up this slideshow for everybody. Bear with me for 1 second, and hopefully you all can see it on the screen. But as the county executive said, he does this 7 times each budget season, and likes to get the input from stakeholders and taxpayers and residents to hear what's on your minds. This is an important process. So we're going to go through a short slideshow here, give you a little bit of background information on the budget, but then the most important part will be hearing from you all. So we'll breeze through this pretty quickly. First, just to kind of set the table, here's where we are. What you see on the screen is the budget timeline or the calendar. And the important thing here is we're just getting started. So you see January is circled. that's when we're doing these budget town hall meetings. But we're just starting to get our preliminary budget requests and data together. And the real decisions that the county exec and his budget team have to make will happen in the next couple months. And they culminate on usually on May 1st. But this year, because May 1st is on a weekend, we'll be introducing the county executive's proposed budget on April 29th, Friday, April 29th. The county council then has 45 days to deliberate and make amendments and pass the final budget. And they're required to do that by charter by June 15th. And then the new budget goes into effect on July 1st. So the fiscal year, what we call it, and this will be fiscal year 23 that we're coming into. That will begin on July 1st and it'll end on June 30th of the following year. So the take-home message here is we are doing these meetings now so that your input can help shape the ultimate decisions that the county exec makes in the budget. Okay, here's a little bit of a summary of where our county revenue comes from. On the right is the list, and on the left is a little proportional graphic that shows you what that looks like visually. So our two main sources of income, of course, are property taxes and local income tax. Those are by far the biggest sources. And then after that, you have some other smaller pieces of the pie, but important pieces like recordation and transfer tax. That's funds that we get from real estate transactions. We get local sales tax from a few things like the parking lots in BWI. We get state shared revenue. And a big component of that is the funds that we get from Maryland Live Casino. And then, of course, there's license and permitting fees, and then investment income on the county's investments. So all told, in this current budget year that we're in, which is fiscal year 22, the total budget was $1.873 billion. So on the other side of the books is where does the money go? Well, the top chart there, the biggest source is, of course, the Board of Ed. So $896.6 million to our school system so that they can educate the 80,000 plus students in that system. And then the next core group is public safety. So that's about $370.5 million. That is our police, fire, detention, and Office of Emergency Management. And then general government is kind of all the government operations agencies that keep everything going. We have Health and Human Services, and then debt service is kind of like the interest payments that we make on our bonds that fund our projects in the capital budget. And we'll talk a little bit more about capital budget. And then we, of course, we have our land use departments like permitting and inspections, and then zoning. And then we have three component units. So these are parts of government that are a little bit independent from the overall county administration, but we have the community college, our library system, and then the court system round us out there. But again, see the number on the left adds up to the same number on the previous slide because the money going out has to equal the money coming in. Okay, so here's a little bit more of a breakdown on our biggest source of funding, which is the Board of Ed. On the previous slide, we showed that it was $896.6 million. So that's 784.7 of direct county funding. So that's essentially one big check we send over to the school system, and then they administer that for all of their programs. But then we also pay for the debt service on county school construction, and the county pays for the school health officers and school health nurses, and then school safety, which includes the student resource officers as well as the crossing guards. So all told, that's about 51% of our entire county budget. So over half of our recurring revenue goes to our friends at the school system. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to the county executive, and he's going to walk us through some highlights from the current year budget.
Right, and I should note that this is our third budget in our administration and with this county council. And this third budget we call back on track because the one before it was the one where we were tightening our belts because the COVID projections were pretty dire and we thought revenue was going to be down. The good news is that each of our budgets we've ended with a surplus, and because we have budgeted conservatively. And so what we did this year with that surplus was to make sure that we are prepared for any future downturns in the economy. So we increased our funding in our rainy day fund, And we are going to soon be, we're about to increase it again. So it's going to finally, for the first time ever, get over $100 million. It's something that the bond rating agencies love to see, to have more on reserve for the rainy days. We also, on our pension funds, we reduced the way that we calculate what we project the revenues to be. So we lowered that calculation, which means we put in more money and we make sure that our pension funds are basically well funded for our retirees. Bond rating agencies love that as well. And then maybe the most important of all to me is I don't like to borrow money in my business. I don't like to borrow money, period. We have to in government, but debt affordability is something that's calculated based on a lot of factors. And when we do our capital budget, we try to stay within that affordability. When I came in, it was $75 million over affordability to try to cram a bunch of stuff in there. We created with the council the Permanent Public Improvements Fund so that we could catch up on a lot of the infrastructure projects that had been delayed, make sure we can continue with our school construction, do things like the swim center, do things like Route 3 improvements to get the state to come in. But we managed to do that and reduce that over affordability, and now we're within affordability, and we're also putting money up front, paying rather than borrowing with some of that money that we've got. So next slide. So public safety, I do want to say that it's been a difficult time, for police and fire departments across the country. Violent crime has been up across the country and in the region. In Anne Arundel County, the story has been different. We have, I think, a fantastic police department, and violent crime this last year has declined by 11%. And I think part of the reason is that we in the council have supported our police department, given them the technology that they need, both to solve crimes and to do the work on the streets, to build trust with the body-worn cameras, which is something that I think everybody now is supportive of. And but also created a community services bureau with our new chief when she came in. It was partly a reorganization, but it elevated the work, the community policing work, and then an increased pay for our police officers so that they're paid as much as the regional average, and increased the number of officers. So we've increased that, so we're finally close to that magic threshold of about 800 officers sworn in Anne Arundel County. In our fire department, we've done the same. We've increased the number of firefighters. We've invested in apparatus, and we did something that I'm really glad we did during this pandemic, was increased training for paramedics. And it's very expensive and a long training process for a firefighter to become a paramedic, but clearly, given the public health issues that we've had, we need more of them. So next slide. On education, our first budget was probably the biggest infusion into our school system historically. Well, it's always bigger than the years before, but way above required maintenance of effort. Again, we tightened the belt somewhat the second year, but then this last year we added 35 new classroom teachers to reduce class sizes, added 15 new behavioral health special ed positions, and we finally dealt with the issue. We did part of it in our first and second year budgets, but we finally got rid of the back step steps that teachers had not been paid. So they were promised these annual steps, and during the recession, they did not get them. And then after the recession, they still did not get them many of those years. So we have not only given those teachers those step increases and cost of living each year, but paid the back steps they were owed, so that everybody is where they should be according to the scale. Next slide. And then on infrastructure, I think the things that I'm most proud of are the way that we have used our county funds to leverage state money. So we've had promises for decades about improvements to the worst traffic bottlenecks for y'all. It's Route 3. So none of it has been done. SHA has said that it's on their list. We have provided our own money as a carrot to incentivize state highways to sign contracts with us to finally move forward, both on Route 2 and Route 3. In fact, because we've done that, of the top 10 projects that are ranked in the state of Maryland across the state for road improvements, 6 of them are in Anne Arundel County. So we're expecting much more funding from the state. And of course, we have the federal infrastructure money as well to deal with some of the worst traffic bottlenecks. We have a plan on fire stations that is moving forward, and it's 5 stations in our 6-year plan, and our school construction plan is continuing and moving forward. And I should mention once again, the swim center is fully funded. It's going to be just outside your district, but not in Odenton as we first thought, but close enough, a little bit more towards Severn. That's going to be, it's fully funded, and I think construction doesn't start until 2024, but hopefully it'll be done the next year. So next slide. On the environment, we've created a stormwater strike team. Stormwater issues have been probably one of the things people complain about the most. Often they fail in new developments and they affect the neighbors. So we've got more inspectors that are working on that. We created the first independent resilience authority in the country, the second in the state. The one in Charles County was not really a separate from government, but we funded it in our budget, and we've mapped the county, and we've been able to show where we need infrastructure improvements to address not only what's going on now with storms, but what we expect in the future. $250,000 forest conservation mitigation fund for county projects for forest conservation, funding to implement our green infrastructure plan and our green wasteland acquisition. And we're finally moving forward on the infrastructure we need to transfer our county fleet to all electric and also serve residents who need charging stations around the county. Next slide. And in your district, here's a list. You know, one of the ones that I mentioned the swim center, but Councilman Pruski will probably talk about some of the others if you don't talk about some of these. But there's a list here. But one I'm most proud of is in Odenton, doing the park that we're going to build in Odenton and got into the budget next to the library. At the same time that we're doing, and it's not even in this budget here, we're using the tax increment finance money from Odenton to build the structured parking at the train stations so that there won't be the same parking problems. And around all of that, I think what you're going to see is the kind of redevelopment and development that originally was envisioned in the Odenton plan. Sidewalks that will actually go somewhere, and the kinds of businesses that people want, and really turn that into the community that was originally envisioned. So that's really the transit-oriented development example that we want to show for the whole county that this can work. Next slide. I think
Chris. Back over to me. Yep. So thank you for that, County Executive. I wanted to talk very briefly just what we see when we're looking ahead in terms of the county budget. So when we look at revenues, our current year budget and the previous budget from fiscal year 21, revenues came back better than we projected. So we had expected there to be a negative impact from the pandemic. As it turns out, because of the federal stimulus and some wage growth, the local income tax revenue has been pretty strong. We also received what we refer to as ARPA funding, which is the federal recovery funds through the American Rescue Plan Act, which is where ARPA comes from. So as we look forward for this upcoming year in fiscal year 23, we think the revenues will continue to come in as expected. We expect that they're going to be stable. We're cautiously optimistic, but we're cautioning everyone that even though revenue looks pretty good, that will be offset largely by the increased cost of doing business and inflation. So we have to be very cognizant of both sides of the coin there. We do have a pretty healthy fund balance, and fund balance is essentially funds that we have that are available because either the revenue came back more than we budgeted for, or we found savings in our existing budget. And so we capture that together as fund balance. We've got a very healthy fund balance right now. It's largely as a result of the responsible fiscal policies that the county executive spoke about before. And it's important that if we use fund balance, we use them for what we call one-time expenditures. So that's something that, equipment we could buy or a temporary program, but we don't want to fund things that have an indefinite lifespan with fund balance, because you can only use fund balance once. It doesn't continue to come back. And then just a little bit more on the American Rescue Plan funding. The county got $56 million from the feds back in last May. We'll get another $56 million, which is our final payment in this upcoming May. And we have put all that information on how we're proposing to spend that up on our Open Arundel website. So a little bit more about our fiscal expectations. On the expenditure side, we are expecting some what we call non-discretionary increases. So these are things we have to pay for because they're required. And that's the increase in debt service. And, of course, every year there's usually a moderate increase for our health insurance and pension contribution. And then we negotiate our compensation packages with our bargaining units, which is our labor unions. So those are all required. But then there's discretionary increases. And these are things like our package of compensation for the non-union reps, giving additional funding to the community college, the school system, our other component units. And then there's other things like enhancing some of the health and human services programs that we've put into place because the pandemic really did shine a light on some of the inequities that are out there for our vulnerable communities. And we've increased the scope of some of those programs. And then, of course, all of our departments every year will submit what we call supplemental budget requests. So these are new programs that they want to staff or additional positions that they need to fulfill their mission. And so we try and match up those priority needs with the funding that's available. We're never able to give them everything they want, but we try and help our departments out, provide the services that county residents expect. This is one of my favorite slides because it shows where Anne Arundel County stacks up in comparison to the other 23 jurisdictions in Maryland. What you're seeing here is the property tax comparison. So Anne Arundel residents pay $0.933 or 93.3 cents per $100 of assessed value. That's the best deal around in Central Maryland. It's the seventh lowest in Maryland, but it's the lowest among what's known as the big 8 jurisdictions, which are the most populous counties. And you can see all those counties to the left of us have a higher rate. Many of them are over $1 per $100 of assessed value. Similarly, in income tax, this is your local income tax. State law says that it can be a maximum of 3.2%, and you see about half of Maryland counties do have that max. Fortunately, in Anne Arundel, we're not one of them. We're paying 2.81%. That's the 4th lowest in the whole state, again, out of 24 jurisdictions. So the only jurisdictions that have a lesser rate are Garrett County in far western Maryland, and then 2 Eastern Shore counties. So nowhere near the population or the types of programs that Anne Arundel has. So again, very well positioned in terms of our neighbors. This, I think I turn back over to you, Stuart, to talk a little bit about our efforts with CARES and American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly say on the property tax, some people may have gotten the new assessments from the state of Maryland. About a third of the county, you get reassessed every 3 years, and so they divide the county up into 3. Based on the market, the values have gone up significantly. It's averaged in this year 8% increase in for residential, but fortunately, another good deal that we have in the county is that while at the state level, you can go ahead, they can raise your assessment and you can have to pay taxes on that full increase up to 10%. In Anne Arundel County, you don't have to pay taxes on that whole 8%. You can only go up 2% or have to pay on 2% increase in a year. But in order to do that, you have to file for your homestead tax credit. Basically, if you live in your home, you qualify. So I encourage people to file for the homestead tax credit. I probably shouldn't say that because it reduces revenue to the county. Sorry, Chris, but it's the right thing to do. So I'm not going to talk a lot about the federal money. It's been fantastic. I can tell you that. The CARES Act, all spent, all accounted for. You can go online and see how we spent that money in another slide that I'll show you here. Most of it for dealing with the economic impact and the health impacts of the pandemic, and that was what it was designed for. So when you see food distribution, it's probably the CARES Act, the eviction prevention work, CARES Act. And then now we have the American Rescue Plan Act, which we get over 2 years. So the first half of that 120 million, 56 million came in May of 21, and the other half will come in May of 22. If you jump to the next slide, you can see a bit of a breakdown of this is actually money committed. That's why it's over half. But the blue is county operations. We are allowed to use some for county operations that are there as a result of the pandemic. And then on the left, you've got the health and wellness, most of the health impacts, food assistance down in green. But if you jump to the next slide, you can see this thing that we call Open Arundel, aacounty.org/Open Arundel. And if you are a budget nerd or a government nerd and you like to know not only how the money, your tax dollars are being spent, you can look at everything there with the federal money, but you can look at every department of county government and see what the performance metrics are that we're looking at and see how those departments are doing. And those are the kinds of things we look at as we're doing our budget. So this is something new that we created, our administration, because we wanted the public to be able to look at the same stuff we look at to make decisions. So the next slide is actually something kind of cool, but I'm going to ask Chris to jump in and do a real quick review. It's getting a whole lot better. This is the new version of the budget tool that we created in the beginning, where you can go in and mess with the budget without it actually changing anything, but create your own budget. We had that before. It was sort of a rustic version of this, and Chris will show you what we got.
Sure. Well, thanks, Mr. County Executive. So this is what we're calling our open budget tool. It's not quite ready for prime time, so you can't find it on our website yet, but the county executive was so excited to show it to everybody. He asked us to do a little demo of it. So I'm going to walk you through. But basically what this allows you to do is explore the budget on the operating revenue side and on the expenditure side, and dig a little bit deeper and understand where the money comes from and where the money goes. So we'll start over here. I'll click on operating revenue. And what you can see here, similar to the slide in the presentation, is the various different components of where our revenue comes from. And I'll just kind of click on one so we can see, but this is fees for services. And then you see all these other pie chart or all these other bar charts are where the funding is broken down in there. So you see we have our rec and parks funding, we have health department fees. This is where our revenue from the golf course comes from. And yes, the golf courses do make money for the county. And so you can really get a breakdown of this and explore it. And we don't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to give you a taste of it, but you can do that for any of these, 7 or 8 different components. If we go back on the expenditure side, so this is where the money goes. These are all of our different departments that are broken out. And you can see, again, our friends at the Board of Education kind of outscale all the rest. That's a lot of our funds go there, but you can see all the way down to our smallest office. Here's my office, the Office of the Budget. We take up 0.09% of the county expenditures, but County Exec, do you want to explore one of these? Maybe Rec and Parks, Police Department, where do you want to go today?
Well, if you're going to do one, I know which one it's going to be. Chris's favorite department of Fun.
All right, you want me to do Rec and Parks? Okay, I'll do that. So you click on Rec and Parks, and so now you're going to see on the top, this is showing you the different budget objects. So that's kind of different categories of the spending. And the top one you see is personal services. So that's contractual employees and salaries for full-time employees. And then you see supplies and materials, and then grants, contributions, and others. That's money out the door to some of our community partners. So that's showing you where the money's going on that end. On the bottom, these are the different bureaus that each department has. So you'll see in the Rec and Parks, they have the Parks Bureau, they have the Recreation Bureau, they have golf courses. Administration is largely their kind of operations. So then you can click on one of these and you can say, okay, let's see what's going on the recreation side. And again, you can see most of that is salaries and wages, contractual services, but they give you the real numbers. And then you can see what the budget was and how that compared. So I think the bar is what the budget was, and the red is what the actuals were. So you can see last year they spent less than was budgeted, and that was because a lot of things were shut down. So you really can start exploring and see different components of the budget and understand it. The other thing you can do on any department is you can click on the positions. And so now you'll see these are all the different position classifications for this department. And there's everything from naturalists to park rangers to maintenance specialists to a turf management assistant. So all kinds of stuff. And you can see the history of, there was 95 positions in 2018, and that's grown slowly but steadily as the scope of the department has grown, now up to 110 positions in the current budget. So again, for budget nerds, you could get lost in this stuff and play for a very long time, but it really does give, I think, everybody the chance to dig a little deeper in our county budget, which I think is exciting. And we'll get ready to unveil this. Needs a little bit more work, but we'll hope to get it out in the coming weeks or months, definitely before we introduce the next budget on April 29th.
All right, it's time for public testimony. We're sorry we took a little longer than that than we had hoped, but I
think we did, County Executive, we did want to remind people that you can get a lot of information on our Your Budget page. So that's aacounty.org/yourbudget. And you can get a lot of the same information you saw on this presentation, but you can also submit your feedback on what you think you want to tell us about the budget. If you have suggestions on what to add, what to subtract, and new initiatives. If you didn't get a chance to testify today, you can always submit it to this email, which is checked and monitored, and we will share with the county executive.
Okay. And as we do the public testimony, Reese will lead us through that, I think, but both Councilman Pruski and I will be listening. We'll be taking notes. We won't be responding to each item, but at the end, I think we'll both have some comments based on what we've heard. So.
Great. Again, my name is Reese Peak. I work in the Office of Community Engagement and Constituent Services. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to give their public testimony, and you'll see a timer on the screen. They'll help you keep track of time. Those who would like to speak should click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and I'll be able to call your name. And when it's your turn, I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and you can speak for 2 minutes on any budget item you like. And like the county executive said, he won't respond to every comment for the sake of time, but we'll share your thoughts after we conclude. So I'm gonna go and look at the participants. We have 7 people raise their hand so far. The first 3 I'm gonna call are Gina Stewart, then Molly Murray, and then Chris Weinstein. So Gina.
Can you all hear me okay, Reese?
I can.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Gina Stewart. I serve as the Executive Director of the BWI Business Partnership and the BWI Community Development Foundation. Both are small nonprofits located in Anne Arundel County. So I'd first like to start off by thanking County Executive Stuart Pittman and Councilman Pruski for funding 2 of our LDC grant programs for this year, FY22, one being the roadside beautification and the other, the free County Connector shuttle. I would like to ask you to continue funding both of these important community programs. Even through COVID, our shuttle continued to operate, and we had over 55,000 passengers in FY21, and our numbers are continuing to kind of get back up to pre-COVID levels. This service really helps those that have no transportation get to jobs and job opportunities. And second, I would just like to mention, as a charter member of the Fort Meade Community Covenant, I'd also like to stress the need for more transportation options for Fort Meade and the surrounding communities. So we urge the council to approve more funding in order to implement more transit routes based on the Move Anne Arundel planning document. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. And next is Molly Murray.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, my name is Molly Murray, and I'm a volunteer at Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. I live in District 4 in Arden-on-the-Severn in the home that was built by my family in 1960. I'm a lifelong pet owner, and I adopted my 11-year-old Dexter, a black and white tuxedo cat, from the AAC Animal Care and Control during COVID in 2020. First of all, I want to thank you, Councilman Pruski and County Executive Pittman, for all you've done to support our animals and the Animal Care and Control Shelter. It's a lively and loving place. We should come visit. Because we have no full-time veterinarian, our volunteers are asked to transport animals to a veterinary clinic in Baltimore whenever they need serious treatment. And what we really need is a full-time vet. And so that's in our proposed budget. I hope we can do something with that. We do our best to comfort the animals that are held at the shelter with dog walking and cat cuddling every day as often as possible. The volunteer team is dedicated and committed, but we always need more volunteers. The facility is amazing. It's clean and the animals are well fed and cared for, but space is often full to the max. And our volunteer coordinator, Christine Lopez Thornley, does about 3 jobs with amazing commitment and energy. She desperately needs an assistant, and I hope we can do something there. They say that a civilization can be judged by how it treats its animals. I hope that Anne Arundel County can rise up to a greater level with more support for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Chris Weinstein.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Chris Weinstein. I'm a resident of District 4 and a purple shirted wearing volunteer at Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. I'm also the president of Friends of Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control, the nonprofit that the shelter volunteers created back in 2014. Thank you both for what you've already done for the shelter and its homeless pets. This is the 3rd year that shelter supporters have attended these town halls. Among the new important things that we hope you will fund, the first is a full-time staff veterinarian. While we appreciate that you have recognized the need for a vet at the shelter, the current budget only funded a part-time position without benefits. That job remains vacant because a part-time job without a benefit package can't compete with the full-time jobs with generous benefits and $20,000 hiring bonuses that are now being offered by veterinary hospitals in our own county. Second, a larger shelter medical budget and additional equipment for the shelter's sparse clinic so they can do more procedures in-house instead of having to send them to outside veterinarians. 3, a livestock trailer so the shelter doesn't have to scrounge around for one whenever it gets pigs, cows, and other large animals. 4, would be an assistant for the shelter's staffer whose very title explains why she needs a helper. She's the shelter's rescue coordinator, volunteer coordinator, foster coordinator, and special events coordinator. At other Maryland public shelters, 2 or more people handle those important jobs. 5 would be some initial planning for a new shelter. We want people to start thinking about that. The existing outdated one does not meet current sheltering guidelines. Thank you both for listening to our requests and for continuing to help Anne Arundel County's very neediest pets.
Thank you, Chris. The next 3 names I'm going to call are James Estep, Debbie Weller, and then Mike Shire. And we'll start with James.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Executive, Councilman Pruski. My name is James Estep, and I'm a proud resident of Odenton. I'm running for County Council here in District 4 with Councilman Pruski facing term limits this year. I want to thank Mr. Pruski for his 7+ years of exceptional service to this community as our councilman. I've been proud to serve as a member of the county's Library Board of Trustees for the last 3 years. I ask both your help in recognizing the essential service library employees provide for us all. I'm testifying in support of the library's budget as well as to ask for your support in a critical supplemental request. Throughout the pandemic, our county's library staff have truly gone beyond the call of duty every day. Not only do they loan books and movies, now our staff are handing out COVID test kits and hosting vaccine clinics. They're handing out food and collecting diapers for needy families. They're helping people learn skills for new high-tech jobs. They're helping prepare our kids for kindergarten. Every day, our staff are helping build stronger communities. I urge your support of our request for market rate adjustments for some of our lowest paid staff. Library staff are our most valuable asset and absolutely critical to providing the top-notch service our customers have come to rely on. If given the opportunity, my own 7-year-old and soon my almost 1-year-old would spend entire days at our local libraries in Odenton and Maryland City, Russell. A sense of wonder is visible as my son goes into explorer mode as soon as he enters the building. For him, every single visit is unique. For him and so many others, the library opens doors to everything this world has to offer. I'm proud to ask for fair compensation for the people who helped make this experience so magical. I urge your support of our request. Thank you both.
Thank you, Mr. Estep. Debbie Weller.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Debbie.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pittman, thank you for the job you have done over the past year. Balancing a budget is challenging. As you said, our county has many priorities: health, education, and safety. Thus, I ask you not to spend money on projects that are not needed or will result in needing funds to mitigate the damage due to the projects. I'm referring to the building of recreational facilities in rural areas, away from the population densities or the densely populated areas that need them, resulting in environmental impacts, more vehicle miles traveled, and traffic congestion. The land may be less and you may get acreage, but has the actual cost been considered? Has the impact on roads and the environment, the increase in vehicle miles traveled and pollution, and the impact on community character been included in the evaluation? One such example is the athletic complex at Millersville Park. Rexham Park stated in their rationale for building a tennis facility, the site can only accommodate 2 fields. So why is the county spending money on 4 to 6 fields with lights, concession stand, irrigation, and comfort station, resulting in more negative impacts on roads, environment, and county on the community character? A facility will require mitigation of local roads, more money. A facility that will change the character by forcing traffic onto local roads, more impacts and more money. The 4 to 6 fields should be closer to the more densely populated area where the needs for them exist. This would be cost effective. At Millersville Park, put a facility that fits the surrounding community and character, a recreation for all areas, not just one user group. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Mike Shire is the next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Mike Shire. I'm from the Fraternal Order of Police here in Anne Arundel County. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Peruski, for your steadfast support of public safety and law enforcement here in our county. As the county executive mentioned, our officers continue to provide the highest level of service to our county, and we're very proud of that fact. We can't do this job without the support of our elected officials like you, Mr. Peruski, and you, Mr. Pittman, so thank you both very much. As you said, Mr. County Executive, it is notable that while crime increases around us here in Anne Arundel County, we've held back that tide and decreased crime in the county. But we also think it's important to note that we are doing this with staffing levels that are far below comparable jurisdictions. That means just like our friends over in animal control, our officers and civilian employees are working well in excess of 100% of a normal workload, many times doing the job of multiple people. We've made great progress here in Anne Arundel County digging out of the hole that has been created by previous administrations' failure to invest in public safety, but there is still more work to be done. So it's vitally important that we have the support of our citizens and our elected officials in their rhetoric and their legislation, and of course, in the county's budget. I don't think it's a coincidence, Mr. County Executive, that the first thing that you mentioned today in your FY22 budget highlights a few minutes ago was public safety. So it is our collective hope, and I'm sure it is yours as well, that our elected officials recognize and remember the vital role that public safety continues to play in making Anne Arundel County the best place for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. The next three will be Jane Seiss, followed by Jason Schweier, and then Carol Carson. So Jane, you have to unmute your microphone.
Good evening, County Executive Pittman and Councilman Pruski. My name is Jane Seiss, and I am the Executive Director of the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of our students, tutors, and staff. The Anne Arundel County Literacy Council provides free literacy, math, and ESL instruction to low-income adults throughout Anne Arundel County. We are asking for your support to continue to implement and grow our programs for some of the most vulnerable people in the county. Our students work with tutors to get a GED, find a job or a better paying job, qualify for training programs, pass the ASVAB military entrance exam, speak and understand English, become citizens, or live independently. Our services are all free: books, laptop loans, tutoring, and assessments. Thanks to our tutoring programs, students are empowered to participate in their children's education and in our communities, improving equality fates for the next generation and helping to break the cycle of poverty. Our dedicated staff provides year-round support for hundreds of students and tutors. We rely on community support and smaller grants to operate. Through our networks of tutors and staff, the Literacy Council facilitates connection, positive influence, and possibility in Anne Arundel County. With your help, we will work with volunteers and students to make life better for so many deserving people. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Jane. Jason Schweier is the next speaker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Jason, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Okay, so County Executive Pittman and Councilman Pruski, thank you for your time tonight and for giving all of us the opportunity to speak to you and give you feedback. My name is Jason Schweier. I'm speaking on behalf of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee. It's an advisory committee to the Department of Planning and Zoning. So with respect to the budget, I'd like to thank you for your commitment to the Odenton Library Park and other close amenities like the swim center that benefit the Odenton community. We greatly appreciate your support in ensuring that our community and West County are not forgotten in the plan to carry Anne Arundel County into the future as part of Plan 2040. To that end, I want to highlight 3 items from the Odenton Town Center annual report where the committee supports investment in Odenton's future. First, continued support of the Odenton Library Park as the preeminent place for our community to gather, relax, and play. The committee worked hard to bring community voices together in support of the park, and we are very excited that it's able to come to fruition. Thank you again for your support of this exciting project, but we know that it's just the beginning of the road and we have a long way to go. Second, investment in the grid streets and sidewalks to connect Odenton and make it a more walkable community for our residents to shop, explore, and visit with friends and family without the need to drive everywhere. As we look for transit-oriented development at the Odenton train station, this walkability is critical to make the Odenton Town Center what it needs to become. Third, an investment in the future by exploring new methods of public transportation to allow Odenton residents to do more in the county and state at large. The committee received a summary of the study done on Odenton public transportation options, and this is clearly an area where we can and need to do better. While there is no singular answer that will solve all public transit needs, we definitely need investment to set the path for improvement that will help our residents who cannot afford to own a vehicle because they're not able to reach their places of work or the shops that all of us can enjoy if we do have a vehicle. Again, I want to thank you for your time tonight and the support that you've provided to the Odenton community. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Carol Carson is the next speaker.
Hello, good evening. I'm Carol Carson, a regional manager of the Anne Arundel County Public Library. My home base is at the Odenton Library. I'm testifying this evening in support of the library's budget, as well as to ask for your support on a critical supplemental request. We are seeking funding to initiate a critical outreach program called the Center for Community Engagement. This program seeks to reach people in the greatest need who cannot easily get to our libraries. One of the program's main goals is to increase kindergarten readiness. As you know, less than half of our county's children are ready for kindergarten. Libraries have been teaching early literacy skills for decades inside our buildings. Our story times for babies, toddlers, and preschoolers focus on the 5 practices of kindergarten readiness: sing, talk, read, write, and play, We also offer bilingual programs for these age groups. Early literacy programs teach parents and caregivers to become their child's first teacher and to make learning fun. In fiscal year 2021, nearly 47,000 people attended these programs, and that's in a pandemic. Additionally, we encourage families and caregivers to read 1,000 books with their children before they enter kindergarten. Reading aloud to children from birth helps strengthen language skills and build vocabulary, two important tools for learning to read. In 2021, nearly 6,000 kids registered for 1,000 books before kindergarten. We believe the creation of a Center for Community Engagement can build upon our past successes and impact kindergarten readiness by reaching people where they are. We've asked for $4.1 million for 3,000 square feet of space, staff, and 8 vehicles. We can also start smaller, though the full impact will be with the complete proposal being funded. Additionally, the center staff could provide internet access and computer assistance, as well as partnering with other agencies to provide social services, healthcare, and other services. I urge your support of our request. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 3 speakers are Brian Holzlander, Christy Simon, and it says Penny right there. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. This is Brian Holzlander with Anne Arundel County Professional Firefighters, representing the proud firefighters and paramedics here in Anne Arundel County. I want to thank County Executive Pittman and Councilman Pruski for their continued support, and wanted to recognize the incredible sacrifice that everyday citizens have made throughout the last couple of years to keep themselves, their family, and their neighbors safe. It has truly been our privilege to serve all of you at this time. We've made unprecedented progress under County Executive Pittman and Councilman Pruski's leadership in getting to the minimum staffing that is so needed to keep people safe. But we have not escaped the pandemic unscathed, as our ranks have suffered attrition, and as we are pinched between ever-increasing patient demands and decreasing healthcare resources. In particular, in Odenton, we only have one person at the Odenton Fire Station 24 hours a day due to logistical problems with the Odenton Volunteer Fire Station and organization to provide the housing and accommodation so our advanced life support paramedics can be in that community, can remain in that community 24 hours a day. And that is a huge priority for us on behalf of the citizens that we care so much about. So we urge you to support Chief Wolford's budget in replenishing the ranks of paramedics that we have lost in the pandemic, and to establish a 24-hour advanced life support ambulance presence in Odenton at the Odenton Volunteer Fire Station. Thank you all for your continued support. We will look forward to serving you in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Christy Simon is our next speaker.
Hi, good evening, Reese. And good evening, Councilman Pruski and County Executive Pittman. My name is Christy Simon, and I'm the President and CEO of the Central Maryland Chamber of Commerce, and our office is located in Odenton. I also serve on the Odenton Town Center Advisory Council, and I'm the past chair of the Fort Meade Community Covenant Council. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Pittman and Mr. Matt Powers for meeting with the Chamber's Odenton Action Coalition in the fall of 21. And thank you to Mr. Pruski for your ongoing support of all of our local businesses. As we know, Odenton is a targeted growth area and has been ready for improvements for several decades. There are many development projects that are in progress and waiting on approvals from the Department of Planning and Zoning for various reasons. As a member of the commission working on the Odenton Master Plan revisions, community feedback overwhelmingly supported additional retail, dining, recreational, and living options, as well as public transportation options in the Odenton Town Center. Odenton has watched major investments in surrounding areas like Arundel Mills, Wall Chapel, and Annapolis, and we are hoping to see the same investment in Odenton. Odenton residents report traveling to other areas for services and shopping, and we'd love to keep that business local. Walkability is also an issue here, especially for apartment residents along 175. While some money was previously budgeted for connecting sidewalks, we hope the construction is slated to begin soon, and if necessary, more funds can be allotted to fully fund that project. The developers we speak to are trying to build reasonable projects that support the desires reflected in the public comments. solicited during the master plan revision process. The execution of these projects would support both the business community and the residents of Odenton. And we do applaud the approval of funding for the new park and for the parking garage, and we encourage you to continue funding projects that will improve the quality of life for those who live and work in and around Odenton and Fort Meade. Thank you.
The next speaker is it says Penny. So you are next up, and you can unmute your microphone, and we're happy to hear what you have to say. Hearing nothing, I'm gonna.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, it was a little technical issue. I'm new to the county, and I live in Millersville, very close to Crownsville, and I have to agree with the lady who was talking about Millersville Road and the Millersville Park. That the road and congestion in this area is ridiculous. Veterans Highway, which is a road that the new fire station is going on, is congested morning and evening. I mean, it is so backed up. I think that putting in ball fields there is not a good use of funding and will not add to the environment in that area. There are ballparks right down Crownsville Road at the park that's there. So I'm not hoping that that will happen. The other thing is that there are no sidewalks or lights in this area. You have trails, but no way to get to them. I live off Indian Landing Road, and there are no sidewalks to get to the trail that's going down towards the water. Also, there are no lights in this area. So I'm hoping that money will be spent in that direction. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you listening to all of us.
Thank you. There are 3 speakers left, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity for anyone else who would like to speak. Please raise your hand now. But our final 3 speakers so far, the folks who have raised their hands, are Jenna Mondora, Mike Ponstel, and Kemi A. So Jenna, I'm gonna, yeah, there you go.
Alrighty. Okay. My name is Jenna Mondora, a District 4 resident, Arden on the Severn. I'm a mom of 2. First, want to say thank you for the investments you've made and continue to make in the libraries in our county. These spaces have been so very appreciated, especially now throughout this pandemic. We love Discoveries at the library. Their location has been absolutely amazing. The new location is just mind-blowingly wonderful. And the programming, even the virtual programming it has been provided, has been so enriching for my kids. One of my favorite parts of living in Anne Arundel County has been the outdoor spaces. The playground renovations so far that we've seen have been excellent. We love the playground, for instance, at Lake Waterford that was recently redone. Waterbury Park is great, and I look forward to see what's done in Arden Park. As you move forward with these spaces, just please make sure to make them as inclusive and as accessible as possible for those with sensory differences, those that maybe utilize wheelchairs, or those that maybe use nonverbal communication. You could even try installing large-scale picture boards. I see there was a need for the indoor swim facilities that are being added, but would love an outdoor splash pad somewhere in the county, even if it couldn't be in our district. Indoor swim facilities tend to have restrictions for kids under 3, whereas splash pads tend to be more inclusive even for the littlest ones. They also provide sensory experiences for kids of all ages, and they're just fun. You know, down in Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., they have a fountain that has kind of turned into a de facto splash pad right on the water. And my kids got the chance to use it once, and they absolutely loved it. So I would just love to have that kind of outdoor area here for kids to explore. Thank you for listening, and that's it. Have a great night.
Thank you. Mike Ponsdal is next.
Thanks, Reese. Mr. Pittman and Mr. Pruski, first, I just want to thank you on behalf of Gambrills Odenton Rec Council. We're finally starting the renovations of Gork Park, and we want to thank you for your support in the funding that. The construction started November 1st, and we're looking forward to seeing it completed sometime this year. You know, while this is a great first step, we still need to continue to invest in active recreation field space in District 4. I was recently studying the Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan, and while District 4 is the most populous district in the county, we still rank 5th in the number of available fields for recreation. This explains a lot of why my time is spent driving my children around to facilities in other areas of the county and even outside the county to try and keep up. You know, I know there's a lot of talk about trying to preserve land and such, and there's not a lot of available space, unfortunately, in District 4, but we really don't have the facilities to keep up with the population growth we've experienced over the last 10 years. I've seen it firsthand, and I deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So my ask is that we continue to fund active recreation facilities and our Recreation and Parks Department so we can serve the needs of our community and do the best for what's available for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Kemi A. And anyone else who would like to speak, please raise your hand while she's making comments. There's one more. After that will be Wendy Green. And then we'll conclude with remarks from the councilman and the county executive.
Thank you, Reese. My name is Kemi Adetola, resident of District 4, and I'm the president of the African Diaspora Affairs of Arundel County. I want to use this opportunity to thank the County Executive Pittman and Councilman Pruski. We appreciate your continuous support and your presence at the first African Heritage Festival last year at the ODT Public Library. We look forward to your continuous support in 2022. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And Wendy Green, you are closing us out tonight with a public comment period. We can't hear you if you're trying to say something. I notice you're muting and unmuting your microphone. Give it a couple more seconds. Oh, it's not working. Well, feel free to shoot us an email and we'll take your comment down. So with that, the public comment is concluded. I want to kick it over to Councilman Pruski for his reaction and remarks.
Thank you, Reese, and thank you to the county executive for holding these meetings. I think it's important, obviously, to hear from residents. I appreciate everyone that showed up this evening. I actually got some emails and Facebook messages as well as far as priorities with the budget. I do want to go over a few highlights, though, that I think are important. And first of all, I know we didn't have a lot of educators and teachers. We did have some first responders on, but thank you for anybody who's publicly serving right now and serving the public. It is a difficult time with challenges for those of you that have school-age children like myself. And all of our teachers, all of our aides, all of our bus drivers, but even our first responders, our police and fire. I recognize your support and efforts, and I will make sure that you're a priority in the budget, as always. One thing I do want to highlight, though, in particular with District 4, and you kind of heard some of the comments by local residents, is the population growth. It certainly has been very beneficial in terms of the economy, jobs, and District 4 obviously being a leader in Anne Arundel County. But one of the challenges that you often hear is the quality of life and infrastructure, and that includes our schools, our parks, our recreation and services. And I want to thank the county executive for the first few budgets. He's worked closely with me along with the administration to make investments. For instance, Piney Orchard Elementary School is very overcrowded right now, and West County Elementary School is in the key to be built, and it's critical to help with projects such as that. Also in Odenton, the parking garage, having the Odenton Park in the plans and the West County Swim Center is well-needed infrastructure for our area. But I'll stress again the point that was made earlier, we do need to look at the fact that we need additional parks and recreation services. And they may be different besides ball fields. I know one of the things that's been discussed in Odenton is having an amphitheater and a public gathering place, because Odenton right now doesn't really have that. Certainly we were trying to push for that with the swim center, but that is something we can look at. And I want to highlight and thank the county executive also for his efforts to help with roads and sidewalks. In particular, Route 3. I did start a petition, Fix Maryland Route 3. You can look it up online. I ask that people continue to push for improvements. That road is in the heart of our county, and while it's a state road, it has an impact on all of us. And so we're trying to work with our regional partners and also at the state level to make improvements. In addition, we will have to look at 32, 97, 170, all roads that at some point we do need to make improvements. And last but not least, more importantly, is to look at the quality of life issues in our budget. We have a balanced budget, which is very important. We also have low taxes. Those taxes allow us to keep money in our pockets, but we also have made investments with the money that we've had, particularly in our police, fire, and within our schools. And that's made a difference during this pandemic. And I really appreciate the county executive and the administration for obviously doing that. But I do want to thank everyone for certainly coming out. If you have any other additional thoughts, please feel free to reach out to me or the county executive. This is the initiation of the process. So the beginning, not the end. And we're looking forward to a strong 2022. As I finish out my term on the Anne Arundel County Council, I'm certainly glad to serve all the residents in District 4. And I appreciate you allowing me to do so. And thank you and have a great evening.
All right. Well, I want to acknowledge what you said and stress also how grateful we are to our first responders, our educators, really everybody that's trying to work during this pandemic, get kids to school, deal with kids when they're not in school. It's, we didn't expect this spike in cases to be this bad. And we believe that they'll go down at the same steep rate that they went up, and that we'll be in a much better place this spring. But in the meantime, I just want to encourage everybody to have grace and patience when they deal with the institutions that are working short-staffed right now. I was thrilled to hear from some business leaders and folks, Odenton Town Center, BWI Partnership, about their support for transit. And their support for really making Odenton Town Center into what it was originally intended to be. I am as excited about that as anybody, and that's why we've got these things in the budget, and we will push them forward and hopefully get the good development to happen that is in the pipeline, and some new projects as well that are going to make Odenton a great place to live, a town center. The discussion over the parks, I think we're lucky that we have a great park system in Anne Arundel County. We want to make it better. We build these things, we have to make sure that they're staffed, we improve them, and we increase the availability of good quality recreation. I think there's not much more that's important for our health than being able to get outside, get fit, enjoy nature, and play sports. And so, the Millersville Park has been very controversial. The county's owned it for quite some time. I was surprised that the tennis center, we thought that was going to happen there. I had some concerns about it. I think we can do something there that is going to be less invasive with sports. It's required to be active recreation, and it will be. But I've offered to get together with the residents, and I will, before the process, before the design is even underway at Rec and Parks to get input. I've heard a lot of input, and I know Councilman Pruski has as well. But we do have a need for more ball fields. I've seen it. My kids play soccer. Anybody who's raised kids in this county knows that we need more places for youth recreation and adult recreation as well. Animal care and control. I'm sorry we're not in person so that you could hold up your signs as you have in past years with the projects that you want funded. I'm glad that we've been able to help with some that you've had. Part-time vet, I understand, is not working out, and we need to do better there. Glad we have funding for a volunteer coordinator, but I can see how that's a huge job because the volunteers are so important there, and the cages are there. But I know you need a livestock trailer because when there was a boar that got loose on our farm,
there was no trailer with which to move that boar to another location. And so I think that's probably something that we should be looking at as well. And maybe long-term, you're right, that we need to have a better facility, but we do need to do well by those most vulnerable in our community, and that certainly includes our animals. Our libraries are fantastic. I mean, they're like community centers in this county, and I love hearing from our library folks each year at the budget town halls. And they know the way to my heart when they talk kindergarten readiness. That's something that I've talked a lot about, and that we have to do better. And it is true that our libraries are an important part of preparing kids for kindergarten. So we will look at that. I can't remember the name of the woman who suggested a splash pad. Good news is that the North Arundel Aquatic Center will be getting a splash pad. It's already in the budget, and I think that is coming soon. And then the new swim center, don't know yet, but design is underway. So stay tuned on that. But I agree, nothing better in the heat of the summer for kids to do. Literacy Council does great work. Thank you, Jane, for your note recently. I got it. If you weren't at the Heritage Festival that was at the library, it was in its first year. Thank you for doing that, Kemi. It's something that everybody should experience, and I know that's going to grow in the future. Thank you for our firefighters and police for being here to remind us how important you are in the budget. You will be top of mind, as will teachers and all the services that we need in this county. So I think we're in a good place fiscally, and I know that we can't do everything. There's a lot more that we would like to be able to do, but I think within our means, we're going to be able to put together a good budget. So please stay in touch, and we're going to be putting all the results of all these budget town halls together, and sitting down and with the budget office and doing a lot of math and having a lot more conversations. So thank you, everybody, for helping make Anne Arundel County the best place for all. Good evening.